You know Mrs. Middleweek, don't you, love? Well, I did, but wasn't altogether delighted to see her sitting in Mother's living room on Christmas morning. I had expected it to be just me and Mum this year. My eyes bulged as I saw she had the red velvet out of the tin, and those nice biscuits I brought from Tesco Express on the weekend. Mrs. Middleweek's at a loose end this year, Edward, so I thought she could join us for a dinner. And maybe a round of Midsummer Murders Cluedo. You don't mind, do you? Well, with Elsie Middleweek sitting there looking like a cat practicing a human smile, I could hardly say, "No, I'm outraged, dear. I'd rather she went home to Tansy and Toots," those were her stoats, "and left us alone to celebrate the festive season in peace." But I couldn't. And to top it all, she looked extraordinary in her verdant green dress and bauble earrings. It was like looking at a Christmas tree sat next to a Christmas tree. I'd have laughed, but I was bereft. "I hear you're an author now," said Mrs. Middleweek. She had a red velvet smeared all over her mouth. It's like her lipstick had come alive and was trying to escape her face. "Yes," I said. "That's wonderful," she said. "I'm going to read it." "Do you know what it's about?" I said. "No," she said, "but it's a crime one, isn't it? And I love those. I'm a big fan of anything like that. Your mum would tell you. I'd never miss an episode of Miss Marple on ITV3. "My book isn't like that," I said. It's dead psychological. It's about the why, not the who." "What's that?" she said. "About who?" No, not about the who, I said. The why. Why do people do terrible things? Don't you wonder about that?" "I don't much," she said. "My osteoarthritis takes up most of my time. I'm constantly worrying about my knees. I can't be thinking about other folk." "Well, then this will open your mind," I said. "Better late than never." "Edward!" Mother was so sprung she dropped a macaroon into a brew. "Mrs. Middleweek has a certificate from the Cardiff College of Holistic Medicine, and she's chair of the Mousel Book Group. Her mind is very much open." "I apologise," I said. "Of course it is. I hope you enjoy it, Mrs. Middleweek. Do let me know what you think. Maybe you'll pass it around at your next gathering." "I will," she said, and turned away. Mother jabbed my arm. She has fingers like knives. "A good word from Mrs. Middleweek could do wonders for your book around here," she said. "Why don't you top up her hot water?" I plucked the teapot from the tray and got up to leave the room. "You must be very proud of him," said Mrs. Middleweek, addressing Mother. "How wonderful to have a writer in the family." "Yes," she said, waving me out. "He's only the fourth we've had since the war. And it's every bit as good as his Uncle Charlie's." "What was that called?" asked Mrs. Middleweek. "It was a book about building materials," said Mother. "A bestseller in its day. I'm sure it's what inspired my Edward." "Happy New Year to you," said Mrs. Middleweek. She'd popped over on a cold January day and was already helping herself to the last of Mother's good cheese. I'd felt guilty for having so much of it over the Yule. Wedge after wedge of apricot-infused Wensleydale. I wish I'd had the lot. "Edward," piped up Mother, "Mrs. Middleweek gave a copy of your book to the ladies after Christmas, and they met last night to ruminate on it." "Oh, yes," I said. "What was the verdict?" "They appreciated it," said Mrs. Middleweek. "They thought it was very well written. You certainly have the words, and you use them in sentence after sentence." "I would have had a job writing it without sentences," I said. "Aye, you would," said Mrs. Middleweek. She rubbed her knees. "Mind you, I don't like the character much." "Which one?" I said. "The narrator," she said. "He reminded me a bit of Joy's boy, Arthur. Did you ever meet him, Sue? He was the one that burnt that girl's dress at Whitson's wedding. An evil little boy, said Mother. He's probably in prison now. Probably, said Mrs. Middleweek. But no, she went on, we wondered why he had such a strange character. Didn't you want to write about someone normal? No, I said. Normal people bore me. Where's the interest in writing about the everyman? Isn't the power of literature that we can occupy the mind of someone who is different from ourselves? Someone who teaches us to see the world a different way? If you like, said Mrs. Middleweek. I just don't think there's any call for rudeness, that's all. Goodness knows there's enough of it in the real world without having it in books. I can't exactly see myself taking Keir Rothwell to the beach with me this summer. Pity, I said. I'm sure he'd like to rub lotion on your back. Edward! Mother was seething. Mrs. Middleweek is trying to get your book out to the masses. You're terribly grateful, aren't you? Terribly, I said. Thank you, Mrs. Middleweek. Thank you for doing what word of mouth and discerning minds could not. Shall I fetch the date and walnut bread? I can't have anything like that, says Mrs. Middleweek. Not with my bowels. Then I shall fetch it toot sweet, I said. Love, are you awake? Mother shook me. I've been having a lovely dream about being behind the counter in an episode of Open All Hours, helping Granville fix that bothersome till. I've just got off the phone to Mrs. Middleweek, she said, and I've got some fantastic news. What? I said. Well, she said, it turns out that Mrs. Middleweek is on the board of the Mousehole Literary Festival. And she wants you to have a stall this year. You can lay out your books and sign them for readers. Doesn't that sound grand? I don't know, Mother, I said. I'm not a very public person. You know how it was when I had to give that talk on the book at the local Waterstones. I was fine until people started to ask me questions, and then I stumbled on things like, why do you write and where'd you get your ideas from? I don't know what people want me to say. I write because I love writing. I have a particular story I'm interested in telling. I like the book to speak for me. That's why I put the words on paper. I don't want to be a celebrity. If I did, I'd have gone into films like your mother's cousin. What weird name? Michael Winner. I know, said Mother, but the Mousehole Festival is attended by hundreds of people every year. And if you can cause a stir there, the rest of the country sits up and takes notice. You'd be mad not to go. Can I tell Mrs. Middleweek you'll attend? Okay, I said, but just for the Saturday. On Sunday, I like to dust off my Columbos. I do like that Peter Falk, said Mother. It'd be wonderful if you could create a detective as sharp as that. I did, I said. Remember? The character of Murgatroyd? She laughed. Oh, it's such a long time ago I read it, she said. I'm sure you did, love. I'm sure you did. Mrs. Middleweek had wolfed down an entire Dundee cake. It was the week after the festival. Thanks for giving Edward the chance to sell his book, said Mother. He's very grateful. Happy to, said Mrs. Middleweek. It's a pity more weren't sold, but you have to understand, Mousehole's a very tough audience. They know what they like. Maybe Edward's book was just too impersonal for them, Maybe they wanted something with a few more jokes. There were plenty of jokes, I said. The humour comes from the characters and the situations, not a conscious effort to make people laugh with wordplay or whatever. It's all situational. Oh, yes, said Mrs. Middleweek, I'm sure. Still, you did manage to sell 5 or 6 copies, didn't you? That's not nothing. No, I said. That's not nothing. Oh, well, you've certainly worked out how to write a novel, she said. Maybe you'll write another one. Perhaps about someone a bit brighter, someone readers like myself can relate to. I could base my character on you, I said. Maybe write about you and the ladies from the book group. Oh, she laughed, but in a funny sort of way. No, she said. I'm not interesting at all, but I do know what people like. I know that very much. It's true, said Mother. Mrs. Middleweek has her finger on the nation's pulse. If you listen to her, your next book could be a bestseller. Your mother's right, said Mrs. Middleweek. I've been reading since I learnt at the age of 37, and I know what works. Well, I'm very grateful for your help, I said. Very grateful, and my ears are wide open. With that, Mrs. Middleweek turned away and asked my mother if she could trouble her for another tea. I was sent out to make it, and, well, that were 11 months ago. I haven't been back to the room since. I suppose she's gone by now.